Let your eyes grow heavy and your breath slow. The fire crackles gently in the hearth. You're wrapped in a woolen blanket, the world outside is hushed, and the flickering firelight paints soft shadows on the walls. Now imagine this. You open your eyes, but it's not your bed and it's not your time. You've awakened in a narrow chamber of stone. The straw mattress beneath you is coarse and uneven. A thin rushlight guttering on the table casts a faint glow across a wooden basin and a chipped goblet of watered ale. There's no hum of electricity, no ticking clock. Only the distant sound of hooves in the courtyard below, and the wind pressing against the shutters like a restless spirit. You're not in the 21st century anymore. You're in England. The year is 1371, and you are a knight. Not the romantic, shining figure from storybooks, but a real man of your age. Risen through duty, loyalty, and countless bruises. The weight of armor is familiar to you. So is the ache in your spine? You've sworn oaths to your liege lord, and the land you own is as much a burden as it is a gift. War looms on the horizon, as it always seems to in this age of turmoil. But for now, you are simply waking. The embers glow softly in the hearth. Your squire is preparing your things. Outside, the fog curls low over the fields, and the rooster's crow sounds distant, as if muffled by the mist. This is no dream, and yet it feels like one. Tonight, you'll journey gently through the slow rhythm of a knight's life, from the quiet mornings of ritual and duty to the heavy burden of armor and battle. You'll feel the stone beneath your feet, smell the sweat and steel of the training yard, and drift through the solemn silence of prayer and preparation. Let the sound of the fireplace guide you. Let the calm of this ancient world soften your thoughts, and let the slow, steady rhythm of medieval life carry you to sleep. The first thing you feel is the cold. Not a biting cold, but a damp one, ancient and creeping, like the very stones of your chamber are exhaling centuries into your bones. The air is heavy with the scent of wet wool, old ash, and the faint metallic tang of your sword resting in its sheath near the hearth. There is no warm duvet here, just a rough blanket of undyed wool, scratchy against your skin, and a straw-stuffed mattress laid over a wooden plank. The bed creaks when you shift, and a thin layer of frost glitters on the inside of the small window's iron bars. Somewhere below, in the outer courtyard, a rooster begins to crow along, wavering sound that floats upward through the morning fog. A second later, you hear the slap of leather boots on stone. Your squire, Osric, is already stirring the embers in the main hall. Soon he'll come knocking with your basin of water lukewarm at best, pulled from the hearth and sloshed into a dented brass bowl. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. The rushes on the floor crunch faintly beneath your bare feet, old, dry, and strewn with rosemary to mask the smell of damp and time. You wince as your toes meet the flagstones, cold as death. There is no such thing as sleeping in. Your day begins with prayer, then food, if there is any. You reach for your tunic, a simple woolen shift, threadbare around the elbows, and begin to dress in silence. Your joints complain. The shoulder you bruised in trading last week still throbs, and the ridge of an old sword scar on your thigh pulls tight as you stand. No mirror, no running water, no privacy. Just the slow, automatic rhythm of a body that has known routine since it was a page boy. You are awake now, and already the responsibilities of your station press on your shoulders like a yoke. But for now, you breathe. The fire has caught again, and the faint orange glow dances across the beams above your head. You hear the soft clatter of dishes being set in the great hall, and the far-off murmurs of servants beginning their daily work. It's a new day in medieval England, and you, good night, are expected to endure it all. The chapel bell rings softly, just once echoing like a breath through the cold stone corridors. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders as you step into the morning stillness. Outside your chamber, the castle is hushed but not silent. A cook mutters somewhere in the kitchen below, banging pots. A page boy coughs twice before scurrying out of sight. Your boots strike the flagstones with deliberate weight. You make your way to the chapel. It's a small, austere room tucked against the north wall of the keep. The windows are narrow slits, more for defense than for light. What little sun there is this morning slants in weakly, casting pale gold streaks across the worn wooden pews. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and incense, comforting, in a way. Familiar. You kneel on the stone floor. The chill seeps through your trousers immediately, but you barely notice. You've knelt here hundreds of times. You know the pattern of every crack in the floor. You whisper the Latin prayers out of habit more than piety lips moving gently, a cadence you've memorized since boyhood. Pater Noster, qui is in celis. Your sword remains at your side always, even here. Even before God, you pray not just for your soul, but for your land, for the health of your Lord, for peace in the region, for the crops to grow, for your horse's aching leg, and perhaps, though you wouldn't admit it aloud, for a bit more meat at dinner tonight. The priest eventually enters, old and bent, trailing a cloud of incense. He doesn't speak. He knows you don't need him this morning. The two of you nod in quiet understanding. You cross yourself, your breath curls in the cold air. Then you rise, slowly, and the day begins in earnest. Breakfast will be small if anything, but your squire is waiting. Your duties await. Armor must be checked. The training yard will need your voice and your arm. The steward will have questions. The farrier will have complaints. And yet, in this quiet chapel for a moment, there is stillness. It will not last long. By the time you reach the great hall, the fire is already going, a wide, shallow hearth with flames licking over ashy logs, filling the room with the smell of charred oak and damp wool. A few servants move silently between tables, placing wooden bowls and jugs on roughly hewn planks that serve as the morning seating. You take your seat near the high table, though not at it. That's reserved for your lord and his family. You are a knight, yes, but that still means knowing your place in the feudal order. Your squire places a bowl before you, steaming slightly, but not invitingly so. Pottage, a grayish stew of barley, leeks, and cabbage boiled into a slush. No meat today. Likely saved for supper, or perhaps rationed if the stores are low. The smell is earthy, sour even, but filling. You tear off a chunk of dark bread, heavy, coarse, slightly stale, and dip it into the mush. The crust is hard enough to chip a tooth, but it softens in the stew. You chew slowly, mechanically. A thin slice of cheese, goat likely, sits on a wooden trencher nearby, waxy and sharp. You nibble it while watching two other knights argue over something trivial, whether a jousting lance ought to be sanded down with ash or oak. You don't weigh in. You've heard this debate before. A boy in the corner vomits into a bucket. Probably the ale again. Too young to drink, but too stubborn not to. A few chuckles rise from the table. The ale is weak, more water than brew, but it is warm and it cuts the edge of the chill. You sip it slowly, the wooden cup rough against your lips. Someone tosses you a boiled egg. You catch it. It's still warm from the pot and you crack it on the edge of the table. A bit of straw clings to the shell. Inside, it's overcooked and chalky, but you eat it anyway. There are no spices, no sugar. No luxuries, not here. Not unless a merchant passes through with something exotic, which hasn't happened in months. Still, this is a good day. There's enough food to go around. No one has scurvy. No one's been sent to the stocks. And there's no talk of bandits this morning. You wipe your hands on a scrap of cloth, rise from the table, and nod to your squire. It's time to inspect your armor. Becoming a knight may sound glamorous in the songs, but as your squire begins dressing you for the day's duties, the truth is far more irritating. It begins with the linen. A tunic and breeches, soft by medieval standards, but still scratchy. They were meant to be worn beneath your armor to keep the cold metal from biting directly into your skin. But even with that layer, it's never truly comfortable. The fabric clings where it shouldn't, bunches under the arms, and already smells faintly of the last time you wore it, which, truth be told, was yesterday. Next comes the chausse, a kind of hose, one for each leg. They're wool, hand-stitched, and a little too tight. Your squire fastens them awkwardly with leather laces at the thigh. You shift on the wooden stool, grimacing as they ride up in all the wrong places. Then the gambeson, thick quilted, padded armor. It's heavy on its own and stiff with age, sweat, and repeated patchwork. As it goes over your head and settles on your shoulders, it feels like slipping into a portable oven. The coarse stuffing inside horsehair or old rags smells faintly of mildew. It squeaks slightly as you move, a constant soft groan against your body. The chainmail shirt comes next. Hauberk, they call it. It's been patched twice this season, once after a boar hunt, and once after a brief skirmish with a group of overconfident outlaws. It takes both you and your squire to lift the thing. Over 40 pounds of hand-linked metal, cold at first, then searing hot, and always digging into your collarbone. As it slides over your head and down your arms, you feel every ounce. The mail bunches at the elbows, tugs at your neck, and presses unforgivingly into the tops of your feet. Movement becomes heavier, slower, but you're used to it. You've learned to move like this, with intention. Next, greaves for the shins. Spalders for the shoulders, vambraces for the arms. All strapped tight with leather cords that your squire fumbles with. He's still learning. You hiss as one of the straps digs too deep, but you say nothing. Better that he learns now than later on the battlefield. By the time your helm is set gently on the bench beside you, your body is tired and the day hasn't even truly begun. And yet, there's something comforting in the weight. Like a second skin, brutal, protective, and utterly necessary in this world of shifting alliances, petty lords, and ever-hovering threats. You take a deep breath, feeling your ribs press against the mail. Outside, you can hear the distant sound of a blacksmith's hammer and the neighing of horses. Another day in the realm. The songs never mention how hard it is just to walk in this stuff. As the sun climbs a little higher behind the chapel's stained glass window, you step forward to a simple stone altar, a place older than memory, steeped in the quiet gravity of tradition. The room smells of beeswax, cold incense, and damp stone. You kneel, and your armor creaks under its own weight. Before you lies your sword. It rests on a worn strip of linen beside a small vial of holy oil and a leather-bound book of scripture. The blade itself is not extravagant, plain, utilitarian, and slightly pocked with the scars of past battles. But its weight in your life is far more than steel. Today is a consecration, not of you that was done years ago during your vigil, but of the weapon, a ceremonial cleansing, an unspoken prayer. The chaplain, eyes lowered in solemn concentration, dips his fingers into the oil and traces a cross on the flat of the blade. He mutters Latin softly, his voice reverberating off the chapel's curved ceiling. You understand only fragments: fortitudo, sanguinem, servitium, strength, blood, service. You press your gloved hand to your chest and bow your head. The moment is quiet, but not peaceful. This is no joyful rite, not a marriage or a christening. This is preparation, a reminder that your life is no longer your own. In this world, a knight's sword is more than a weapon. It is a symbol of justice, of violence, of loyalty to a lord or a cause that may or may not deserve it. And once drawn, it speaks in iron and blood. You remember the first time you killed a man. It was not elegant. He bled into the mud, clutching at the wound you gave him, his eyes wide with terror, not rage. You still dream of that look sometimes. And yet you draw the blade now and place it in your scabbard. There will be more, always more. As you rise, the sunlight catches the silver cross hanging around the chaplain's neck. He does not look at you. He doesn't need to. He has seen too many like you. Boys turn men turn steel. Outside, the world awaits. Feasts, fights, borders to patrol, peasants to manage, lords to appease. But here, in this moment, you are simply a man, breathing beneath armor, carrying a blade blessed in oil and in blood. And once again, you walk into history, one heavy footstep at a time. After the sword's blessing and the quiet of the chapel, your stomach reminds you not of holiness, but of hunger. You make your way through the narrow passageways of stone and torchlight toward the great hall, where warmth gathers in a low fog of smoke, sweat, and simmering broth. The scent of barley porridge thick with leeks greets you before the door even opens. Not pleasant, not foul, just medieval. The hall is dimly lit by arrow-slit windows and a hearth smoldering against the far wall. Inside, other knights are already seated on long wooden benches at a trestle table scratched and scarred by years of elbows, knives, and spilled mead. They speak in rough, hushed tones. No courtly flourishes here, just practical grunts and clipped old English. You join them. A servant, a boy no older than 10, slides a wooden bowl toward you, its rim chipped, its contents steaming. It's gruel again. Boiled oats or barley, watered down milk if you're lucky, salt if the kitchen wasn't stingy, and the occasional sliver of onion or pork fat if some boar was brought down nearby. Today, plain gruel, one hard crust of black bread. You dip your fingers into the bowl and begin to eat silently. Spoons are rare and mostly reserved for the Lord and his household. Most here eat with fingers, occasionally using a dull eating knife that doubles as a weapon. There's no tablecloth, no napkin. Grease and porridge smear across beards and mustaches. You wipe your hands on your tunic or the table edge, or nothing at all. Someone across from you belches loudly. Another knight makes a joke about fleas in the blankets or lice in someone's beard. You smirk, not at the joke, but at the familiarity of it. There's a strange camaraderie here, one forged not from affection, but from routine hardship. The fire pops. Somewhere above, a draft whistles between wooden beams. A hound sprawled beneath the table lets out a low, guttural snore. And in this moment, greasy fingers, aching legs, and all, you feel not like a hero of romance, not like the gleaming knights and tapestries, but like a man surviving. One bite, one bruise, one morning at a time, you chew slowly. There's nothing else to rush toward. Your duties will wait. Your armor waits by your cot. The stables are full of restless horses, and your sword is newly oiled. But for now, there is only porridge, fire, and the quiet breath of men who know they might not see another winter. After breakfast, such as it was, you step back out into the biting morning wind. The stone walls offer a little insulation, but the cold is bracing. Your boots crunch over hay-strewn cobbles as you make your way to the stables, that low, creaking structure that smells of sweet straw, damp earth, horse sweat, and manure all at once. The stable doors groan as you pull them open, revealing a long corridor of stalls, each with its own proud, snorting tenant. The horses, destriers, coursers, roundseys, are the heartbeat of a knight's life. They are not just transportation. They are partners, weapons, and status symbols, and yours. Your steed waits at the far end, eyes already tracking you as you approach. He's tall, black as cinders, and thickly muscled, not built for speed, but for enduring the weight of armor and rider. His nostrils flare with recognition. You reach out and run a hand along his neck, the hair thick and slightly damp from the stable's trapped humidity. He presses into your touch, then turns and stamps, impatient. He knows what comes next. You retrieve a stiff bristled brush and begin the long, repetitive act of grooming. Each stroke drags mud and dried sweat from his coat. His breath puffs visibly in the cold, and yours joins it in quiet rhythm. A stable boy might assist, but the brushing, the saddling, the bonding, that's a knight's responsibility. Especially if you expect this animal to carry you through chaos and keep you alive. You move slowly, methodically, brushing legs, checking hooves for stones, smoothing the tangled mane. You speak little, but your murmurs are calming. The world is reduced to this: the rustle of hay, the gentle thud of hooves shifting, the creak of leather straps. You sling the saddle across his back, worn but oiled, and tighten the girth with practiced hands. A few stalls down, another knight curses softly as his horse refuses to stand still. There is a thud, a jangle of tack, and a sharp rebuke. Not every rider forms a bond, but for you. This beast may one day be the only thing between you and death. Outside, the castle yard is beginning to stir. Flax ripple on the battlements, and the forge hammer rings in the distance. But in this stall, all is still. The warm huff of breath, the creak of leather, and the unspoken trust between knight and steed. You rest your forehead briefly against his strong neck. You are ready. The training yard is still rimmed with frost when you step into it. The morning sun barely cuts through the winter clouds, and your breath ghosts in the air, quick and steady. The chill has stiffened your joints, but you cannot wait. A knight trains daily. War does not bend to comfort. The ground underfoot is hard, not yet thawed, and your boots crunch faintly over gravel and frozen earth. Around you, squires and young knights are already drilling. Wooden posts stand like sentinels, wrapped in straw and cloth for practicing strikes. Some clash steel against steel, their blades ringing through the cold like distant bells. Others grunt as they struggle under the weight of their chainmail, thick wool gambesons soaked with sweat despite the icy wind. You nod silently to your opponent, another knight, older, grizzled, with a gray beard and a hard look in his eyes. No words are needed. This is not for show. You draw your sword. Its weight is familiar, not just metal and hilt, but extension of will. Your leather glove tightens around the grip. The first clash sends a jarring shock up your arm, the cold only amplifying the sting, but you shift, pivot, strike again. Muscle memory takes over. The rhythm is brutal and steady. Block, parry, step, strike. Your breath comes harder now. The air burns in your lungs. Your surcoat flaps loosely, damp at the collar, and your shoulder aches from yesterday's bruises, but there is no giving in. You circle. Your sword slices the air. Again, pain is part of the practice. Fatigue, too. You train as if your life depends on it, because someday it will. Eventually, your master at arms calls a halt. You lower your blade, panting, the metal steaming faintly. Your opponent grins with a cracked tooth and slaps you on the shoulder. It is a hard hit, but in this world, affection is forged in sweat and bruises. You retreat to the edge of the yard where a boy hands you a cup of warm ale. It tastes flat but comforting. You sip it slowly, feeling the tremble in your hands begin to ease. Around you, training continues. The clang of swords, the barked orders, the heavy breathing. This is the quiet forge where knights are made, not in glory, but in repetition and pain. You look up. The castle looms high above you, cold, gray, unyielding. So must you be. By midday, your muscles are sore from swordplay and morning drills. The castle bell tolls across the courtyard, a slow, resonant sound that echoes through the stone like a summons from the bones of the earth. It's time to eat. You head toward the great hall, where warmth seeps through the heavy wooden doors and the scent of something vaguely meaty hovers in the air. As you step inside, the draft of warm smoke and roasting fat clings to your cloak like a second skin. The hearth at the far end burns brightly, not out of comfort, but necessity. Winter chill still creeps between the stones. Benches and long oak tables line the hall. Your place is determined by rank, and as a knight, you reseated away from the dais where the lord and his family dine, but far above the servants and squires who sit near the draughty end. Every detail here reflects status, the pewter of your dish, the thickness of your bread, even the portion of meat you're granted. Your trencher, a thick slab of yesterday's stale bread, is placed before you, soaked in a greasy broth that smells faintly of onions and salted pork. A server ladles a stew into your wooden bowl. Chunks of mystery meat float beside root vegetables, limp from boiling. Some days the meat is fresh. Most days it's salted or dried, occasionally questionable. Wine watered down sloshes into a shared cup. You drink it slowly, not for pleasure, but to chase away the taste of the food, and perhaps the knowledge that the kitchen's meat has passed its prime more than once. There's always a tinge of sourness you pretend not to notice. The talk around the table is muted. Knights don't chatter like squires or servants. Instead, there are quiet murmurs of local disputes, whispers of bandits, or talk of the Lord's recent moods. A few jesters make a poor attempt at entertainment closer to the high table, but you hardly notice. Your fingers are oily. You wipe them on a cloth that's seen better days. Napkins are a luxury. Here, you're more likely to clean your hands with the edge of your cloak or a bit of straw on the floor. As the meal winds down, a platter of dried fruits and cheese is passed along the upper tables. You grab a fig, wrinkled and hard, but sweet. The cheese is strong, too strong, but it fills the belly. There is no dessert, no dainty pastries or delicate confections. Just the scrape of spoons, the belch of a satisfied night, and the low crackle of fire. Outside the great hall, the wind howls like a distant beast. But here, for a moment, your hunger is silenced, not gone, just quieted. You rise slowly. It's time for the next duty. A night's day is not one of rest. After your midday meal, you leave the warmth of the great hall behind. Outside, the wind whips at the banners atop the battlements, tugging and snapping like restless spirits. You walk slowly down the cold stone corridor toward the castle's chapel, your boots echoing in rhythmic taps, each step a reminder of duty, not just to your lord, but to your God. The chapel is small and dim, tucked behind the east tower. No stained glass here, just narrow slits of light filtering through rough-hewn openings in the wall. The scent of incense still lingers from morning prayers, mixing with the sharpness of damp stone and old wood polish. As you enter, you remove your sword, a sacred custom. You leave it leaning beside the door, the weight of your role set aside for a moment. The air inside is still, thick with reverence. The only sounds are the soft creak of floorboards beneath your feet and the distant cooing of doves nesting in the eaves above. A lone candle flickers at the altar, casting long shadows across the carved wooden crucifix. Christ's face is worn smooth from years of smoke and prayer. You lower yourself to one knee, your armor creaking slightly, and bow your head. This is not a place of comfort. It's a place of reckoning. You reflect on your duties, the lives you've taken, the orders you've followed, the sins of pride or wrath that cling to your soul like dust to velvet. You mutter a few Latin prayers, half remembered from your training as a page. Me culpa, me maxima culpa. My fault. My most grievous fault. The priest enters quietly, robes brushing the floor. He nods, saying nothing, and lights another taper. You kneel beside the altar, and for a moment you are not a knight, not a vassal, just a man. He sprinkles a pinch of ash into the flame, and the faint scent of burnt palm and wax fills the space. He murmurs a blessing over you. Memento homo, quia pulvis his. Remember, man, that you are dust. You feel the gravity of those words settle into your bones. The service is brief, and soon the priest retreats behind the curtain to his quarters. You remain a moment longer. Outside these walls, your duties are bloody and brutal. But here, there is space for guilt. For forgiveness, perhaps, or at least the hope of it. You rise, reclaim your sword, and return to the lightless corridor, your shadow stretching before you. Your next duty awaits. The day is far from over. By mid-afternoon, the sun hangs low in the sky, casting a pale, watery light over the landscape. A squire meets you in the outer bailey, holding your heavy fur-lined cloak, a necessity for what comes next. The wind is bitter on the battlements this time of year, and even a night is not immune to the chill. You climb the spiral staircase to the top of the castle's curtain wall. The steps are narrow and worn, each one cut from centuries of feet grinding down the stone. The air grows colder with each turn upward, and the scent of smoke and distant livestock fades into nothing but wind and frost. At last, you emerge into the open sky. The view from up here is vast and sobering. Fields stretch out like frozen parchment, dotted with the bare trees of winter. Smoke curls from a few huts in the nearby village, but there's little sign of life. The crops are long dead. Most folk are indoors, clinging to their hearths and hoping their salted meats will last until spring. You walk the length of the wall slowly, your boots crunching on patches of frost. A guard nods as you pass, red-nosed, wrapped in wool, his spear leaning beside him. He's been up here for hours, watching for threats that may never come. Raiders, poachers, rival lords. Your hand runs along the rough stone of the parapet. The wall is solid, but not immune to time. Cracks thread their way between the mortar, and the moss, despite the cold, clings stubbornly in the corners. You pause to inspect a section where the stone has loosened, frost heaving it outward. You'll have the mason see to it, come thaw. Near one tower, a crow has perched atop the crenellation, black feathers gleaming in the gray light. It eyes you in silence. A bad omen to some, or simply a scavenger waiting for weakness. You shiver not from fear, but from the wind that knives through the gaps in your cloak. This inspection isn't ceremonial, it's essential. A weak wall invites danger. A broken gate invites death. And you, as a knight and protector of this place, must be constantly vigilant. You speak briefly with the watch captain, who reports the usual. No sightings, no signs of movement in the woods. Still, you know, peace never lasts. Even in winter, men grow desperate, and desperation breeds boldness. Before descending, you stop and gaze out one last time toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, another lord sharpens his blade. Somewhere, a band of outlaws watches, waiting for your guard to lower. And so you descend again, back into the belly of the keep, colder, more alert, unburdened by the weight of walls that hold more than just stone. Back in the lower yard, the air is thick with the sharp scent of sweat, churned earth, and the faint iron tang of blood from split lips and scraped knuckles. This is the training ground, where boys become men, and where men remember how fragile youth can be. The clang of practice swords echoes between the walls like slow, rhythmic thunder. A group of squires, thin-armed, red-faced, and bundled in thick tunics, struggle under the weight of wooden practice weapons. Their breath steams in the cold as they swing, parry, and stumble in the frozen mud. You remember this all too well. The ache in your bones, the sting of a cracked rib, the humiliation of falling flat in front of your master knight. You remember the sting of splinters from an unvarnished staff, the dizzying heat behind your eyes when you were knocked flat by a better man. Now, you are that better man. A squire trips over his own boots and lands face first in a puddle. His partner hesitates. You bark a command. Don't wait for him to recover. Your enemy wouldn't. The boy hesitates, then presses forward. It isn't cruelty, it's survival. You step in, demonstrating the correct guard, adjusting elbows and footwork, forcing their young bodies into memory. One lad grips the sword like a baker clutches a loaf. You snap at him. A sword is not bread. Hold it like your life depends on it, because it will. Their hands are raw. Blisters have split open on some palms, and one is quietly weeping, not from pain, but frustration. He cannot lift his sword again. You crouch beside him. You're not weak, you murmur, but you're not strong yet. The road to knighthood is walked on bloodied feet. He nods. Sniffles, tries again. Above, the sky grows darker, and a few gentle snowflakes begin to drift down, settling on chainmail and lashes. It's nearly dusk, the day's light dying like an old man's breath. You call an end to training, but not before one last round of sparring. Two boys, trembling with cold and pride, circle each other with dull blades. Their footwork is clumsy, their swings too wide, but when they clash, the sound is satisfying, real. You watch in silence, not because they're skilled, but because they remind you of yourself. So long ago, on a different field, dreaming of glory and knighthood, never knowing that most of it feels like this. Cold, tired, muddy, but necessary. As they bow to one another, battered and proud, you nod, just once, and turn toward the castle. The fire will feel good tonight. The sky outside has deepened into a dark iron hue, and a thin sheet of frost slicks the stone steps beneath your boots as you enter the great hall. At once, your senses are flooded. Smoke coils lazily from a massive hearth that crackles at the far end of the room. The scent of charred oak mingles with the pungency of boiled meat, stale rushes, and unwashed bodies, a thick, cloying musk that coats your nostrils like wet wool. Candles sputter along the walls, their wax pooling in uneven drips, casting long shadows that jitter across rough-hewn tapestries. The hall is alive. Squires, men-at-arms, household retainers, and minor nobility crowd the benches, their voices a rising tide of laughter, arguments, and the scrape of knives on trenchers. The air is damp with breath and heat, yet every foot of a long table feels as though it sits beneath the shadow of winter. You make your way to the dais. Not the Lord's chair, of course, but close. A spot of respect, earned not by birth, but by blood spilled. You nod to a fellow knight across the table, his face half-shadowed, one eye cloudy from an old wound. He raises a chipped goblet. You return the gesture. A servant lad shuffles forward with a wooden tray. Dinner is unceremonious but heavy. Coarse black bread, salted pork sliced thick, and steaming a dish of lentils that has been boiled into something halfway between stew and paste. There's a wheel of hard cheese that smells faintly of hay and sweat. You tear into it without ceremony, your jaw working through sinew and fat. The ale is sour, sharp on the tongue, but it does the job, warming your chest and numbing your aching joints just a little. Conversation ebbs and flows. One man recounts a skirmish against Welsh rebels. Another boasts of the boar he bested in the woodlands. A third tells a quieter story of a brother who went on crusade and never returned, last seen beneath a red sun near Antioch. You listen, you chew, you drink. At one point, a bard is brought forth, a thin, nervous man with a lute missing a string. He sings an old ballad of a knight who fell in love with a fairy woman and vanished into the woods forever. The room hushes briefly. Then the laughter returns, coarser than before. Across from you, a boy no older than 15 tries to hide his trembling hands as he lifts his ale. His face is pale, knuckles white. He's seen combat recently, you guess, or is about to. You remember that look? You remember yourself. A flicker of compassion, buried beneath armor and years, stirs in your chest. You raise your goblet to him silently. After a moment, he raises his in return. No words exchanged, none needed. Later, the hearth burned lower. The meat has been picked to bone. The room smells now of fatigue, smoke, and spilled drink. Some have passed out where they sit, arms folded over trenchers. Others stumble off toward the barracks or the stairwell, laughter echoing off stone. You rise stiffly, joints creaking louder than your boots. The day has been long, and tomorrow will be the same. You nod once to the fire as though it's an old friend, and slip away into the corridors, your breath already misting in the cold stone air. The castle sleeps uneasily. As the warmth of the hall fades behind you, you wrap your woolen cloak tighter and step into the outer corridors, narrow arteries of draught and stone, winding through a slumbering stronghold. Each footstep echoes too loudly on the flagstones, softened only by the occasional scurry of a rat or the drip of unseen water trickling down damp mortar. Outside, the wind is picked up. You can hear it before you feel it, a thin, whining moan threading through the crenellations above, tugging at the wooden shutters with frostbitten fingers. Tonight, you've drawn the night watch. It's a grim honor, really. Proof of trust. Proof that you'll stay awake while others rest. Proof that you are still strong enough not to nod off beside a brazier like an old man. You carry a short sword on your hip and a heavy iron lantern in your hand, its flame guttering behind a filmy pane of horn. The flicker lights your path in soft gold, casting ghost shadows against the walls. Your route is familiar, the inner bailey first, where horses snort and shift in their stalls. Then the base of the north tower, where the chapel bell hangs silent and cold. Finally, up the winding stair that leads to the outer wall, the parapet, where wind meets sky. The ascent is narrow, built for defense, not comfort. The stone steps are worn and uneven, and your breath begins to mist in the chill, each exhale a dragon's ghost. At the top, you duck beneath a low arch and emerge into the full embrace of the night. It hits you like a slap, the cold, raw cutting, relentless. You press your back against the wall for shelter, raising the lantern to scan the tree line beyond. The castle perches on a rise above the dark woods, and beyond that, miles of farmland stretch into unknowable shadow. The moon glows weakly behind thin clouds, casting the land in pearly gray, and somewhere out there, a sound, not loud, not close, but clear, a howl. A single plaintive wail rising from the hills, wolf, or something trying to sound like one. It fades, but the silence afterward feels heavier. You shift your stance, suddenly aware of how exposed you are up here, just another figure silhouetted against the sky. You keep walking, boots crunching over frost-glazed stone. A shape looms ahead, another watchman, wrapped in furs and half dozing against a wall. He straightens when he hears you, nodding without a word. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say. You move on. Another hour passes, or two. Time is hard to measure in the dark. Your lantern is dimmer now. Your fingers ache, numb even through gloves. Somewhere far below, you hear a cry in the distance, a baby, maybe, or a dream echo. You tell yourself it was just the wind. The castle may be strong, its walls thick and tall, but the night still gets in. Not through the stones, but into the bones, into the thoughts. By the time you descend, your shoulders are hunched and your eyes sting with exhaustion. You hand off the lantern, not once, no thanks given, just duty done. As you trudge back toward your narrow bed, you pass a cold window slit and glance out once more. The wind howls again. And the castle endures. By the time you've ridden in your first real skirmish, your body already knows a little of pain. Blisters from saddle rub, a bruised thigh from an unruly charger, a twisted wrist during a joust. But nothing prepares you for what real combat feels like. One moment, the battlefield is a blur of banners and mud. The next, a mace finds your shoulder like a falling star, cracking bone through mail. You remember the grunt, not from your mouth, but from deep inside, like your body itself exhaling in protest. Then you're on the ground, and the world smells like iron. That's how it often begins, not with heroism, but dirt and blood and breathless confusion. The chirurgeon is a grim-faced man with thick fingers and blood under his nails. He doesn't ask if you're ready. Just pours warmed wine over the wound, the kind of wine you'd normally drink with roast beef, and begins to dig. No anesthetic. No numbing salve, just leather to bite down on. The pain is ... biblical. You sweat until your tunic clings to you like a second skin. You tremble, but you don't cry out. Not here, not among other nights. When the arrowhead finally slides free, your vision is dimmed, your ears ringing. Then the cautery iron comes. Red hot, pressed against the gash. You try to leave your body just for a moment. Try to float away from the scream you know must be yours. The stench is unforgettable. Burning meat, your own, mixed with herbs and hair and sweat. When it's done, they wrap you in strips of linen and pray. That's medicine. Recovery is slow. Weeks of aching stiffness, fevered nights, your body changes. A deep, shiny scar replaces your once strong shoulder. You learn to lift your sword a little differently now. Your joints crack when the rain comes. Your sword arm shakes by evening, but the worst is not the wound. The worst is knowing there's no retirement from this, no pension, no soft years. Just more campaigns, more scars, more blood. You begin to understand why older knights drink so deeply, why their eyes seem distant even when they laugh, why some never speak of certain battles or carry strange talismans beneath their armor. Each night is a walking map of pain, a collection of stories etched into muscle and bone. And now you are one of them. You've heard the word 1,000 times by now, chivalry, spoken like a holy mantra by your tutors, the clergy, your lord. It's what separates you, they say, from the common rabble, from bandits, from beasts. You are bound to a code: honor, loyalty, bravery, courtesy to ladies, mercy to the weak, protection of the church. A knight must be noble in deed as well as blood, and yet the field tells a different tale. You've seen fellow knights trample fleeing peasants under hoof. You've watched a nobleman's son, just your age, torch a village because a rival baron wouldn't kneel. You've stood silent as prisoners were hanged without trial, just to send a message. Your conscience whispers, but your armor silences it. Because the truth is, chivalry is more aspiration than reality. You carry it like a flag in parades, but rarely like a burden in war. You're expected to be ruthless in battle, yet gentle in court, to be a killer, but also a courtier, to write poetry in spring and plunge a sword into someone's gut by autumn. It's a tension that never leaves you. There's the code, and then there's survival. In public, you bow to ladies, kneel before bishops, praise God with bloodied lips. In private, you drink deeply. You confess, but not everything. You wonder if others feel the same, this pull between the man you were supposed to be and the man war requires. Some do. Others don't care. You meet a fellow knight once, weathered and quiet, who says plainly, the code is a poem, but our lives are prose. You never forget that, because that's what it is. A beautiful, noble lie we tell ourselves. Something to write into songs and oaths, to carry like a charm. A mask to wear over the fear, the pain, the things we've done. Sometimes you still believe in it. Other nights, lying awake in the drafty hall, you think the code is simply what keeps your hands clean while your blade does the dirty work. But you still try. You still kneel. You still offer your cloak when the lady shivers, because without it, what are you? Just another man with a sword. There comes a moment in every knight's life, perhaps one you never expect, when steel fails, and your own flesh reminds you how soft it truly is. Perhaps it's age. Perhaps it's one wound too many, or a sickness carried in with the damp winter wind. Either way, it comes quietly, slowly, like a frost creeping under the threshold of your chamber. You feel it first in your fingers, once strong enough to twist a lance from a man's grip, now stiff with cold and time. Your knees ache when you kneel. Your back sings with every step. And though no one dares say it aloud, your body is beginning to betray you. The squire speaks softer when you walk past. The young knights no longer ask your advice, they ask your stories. You are becoming memory. Death in this world is not dramatic. It does not always come in glorious battle beneath banners and trumpets. Sometimes it arrives in a bed of straw with the stink of fever and the rattle of breath. Sometimes it's the result of a simple infected cut, a bad bit of meat, or a winter that's just a bit too long. And even if you re-lucky, even if you survive the battles and the tournaments and the bloody campaigns, what waits at the end? A hall with your name on the wall, a carved effigy in stone, hands folded in eternal prayer, but behind it, the slow decay, mold in the chapel, rats in the granary, sons who forget your stories, grandsons who lose your sword. The world moves on. Perhaps the worst part of being a knight is realizing just how temporary it all is. All the oaths, the scars, the rituals, the code. Time swallows everything. And yet, there's a strange comfort in it. Because as you sit by the fire, wrapped in fur, breath fogging in the cold chamber, you remember all the others who came before. The lords, the friends, the squires who fell and were buried beneath church tiles or forgotten hills. You're a part of a great, quiet procession, not immortal, but not alone. The frost creeps in, your joints ache, but the fire still glows, and the chapel still rings with whispered prayers. You close your eyes. The wind howls outside, and in the dark, you dream of spring. In the hush that follows your final campaign, when the sword rests for good and the armor is hummed to rust, you begin to wonder, what remains of a knight when he no longer rides? Legacy, it is the word that haunts you now. Not the battlefield, not the castle, not even the sacred chapel, but this quiet question, whispered in the empty halls and echoed in the mind. Will they remember me? You've left behind a trail of deeds, some glorious, some grim. A village spared, a rival unhorsed, a cruel baron brought low. But for every noble act, there's a darker memory. A torch lit in a peasant's home, a scream you can't forget, a face beneath your blade that haunts your dreams. What will the bards choose to sing? Perhaps the minstrel will find your tale worthy. A few silver coins to a wandering harpist, and suddenly your name is bound to a melody, drifting across inns and courts. You become a verse, a chorus, a cautionary tale. Embellished, embroidered, made larger than life. But songs fade. Tunes are forgotten. Instruments break. So perhaps your legacy lies in stone instead. A cold effigy carved atop your tomb. Hands in prayer, eyes cast toward heaven, armor sculpted in perfect detail. There, beneath the flagstones of a quiet church, you will lie. A night forever at rest, while friars shuffle past with prayers and mice skitter across your name, but stones too erode, rain seeps in. Letters blur. Generations pass and the pilgrims no longer stop to read. The children playing in the courtyard will ask, "Who is this one?" And the answer will be a shrug. And so you realize something painful, something profound. The only true legacy is how you lived. Not in the songs, or the stone, or the tales spun by scribes, but in the moments, a kindness to a frightened squire, the mercy shown to a fallen foe, the bread shared with the hungry. These things ripple, quietly, The fire crackles gently beside you, but the world beyond your chamber is shifting subtly, slowly, like the turning of a great wheel. You feel it in your bones, as clearly as the cold that seeps into the stone floor. The age of the night, is dimming. When you were young, the world was simple. The sword ruled, the church stood firm, and your place was written in blood and oaths. You swore fealty, and in return, you received a purpose. You fought, you protected, you served. But now? Now, strange ideas trickle into the manors and cloisters, ideas that smell of ink and parchment rather than sweat and steel. The scholars talk of new worlds, of science, of questions that challenge even scripture. The merchant's gold is rising in power while noble titles wane. You see young squires learning not just the lance but the ledger. They practice words as much as swordplay. Some even scoff at chivalry, calling it old-fashioned, a romantic relic of a bloodier time. Castles, once proud and defiant, now seem outdated. Cannon fire and gunpowder threaten stone in ways no siege engine ever could. Armored knights look increasingly like costly ornaments shining but slow against the march of innovation. And then there's the church, still vast, still powerful, but no longer unquestioned. You remember when its word was law, when even kings bowed to its will. But now, whispers travel across Europe, whispers of reform, of dissent, of books printed faster than they can be burned. A chill creeps through your heart that has nothing to do with winter. Where once your sword was the center of your world, now you feel like a shadow walking through a story already ending. You are a living monument to a vanishing time, and yet not bitter, only wistful. You wonder if the change will bring more peace, less blood, more justice. But deep down, you suspect that cruelty is not bound to swords or spears. It simply wears new masks with each age. You close your eyes and listen to the world shift outside your thick stone walls. The old gods of honor and fealty retreat into memory. And in that soft, flickering darkness, you offer no resistance. Only quiet acceptance. The fire has burned low. Its orange glow pulses gently in the hearth, casting long shadows across the walls of your chamber. The warmth reaches your face, your hands, your weary feet still clad in woolen stockings. Outside, the wind still howls against the battlements, but in here, everything is still. You lean back in your creaking wooden chair, armor long since shed, wrapped in a heavy cloak of wool and fur. You are no longer the rider on the battlefield, no longer the hunter in the woods, no longer the sentinel at the gate. You are simply a man, and tonight, a dreaming man. In your mind's eye, you see a younger version of yourself, bolder, stronger, unscarred. He rides across green fields with a banner trailing behind, the sun gleaming off his helmet. He laughs in the company of his comrades around a smoky campfire, roast meat crackling on the spit. He kneels in candlelight before a holy altar, whispering prayers not out of fear, but belief. But that night is a dream now, a soft one, a good one. Time has worn away the sharpness. The horrors of war have faded like blood washed from steel. The memories that remain are the voices of those long gone. The rustle of chainmail, the creak of saddle leather, the smell of horses and firewood and winter. Outside, the world continues on. Somewhere, another squire sharpens a blade. Somewhere, another old knight dreams his last dream. You shift in your chair, bones aching but your spirit calm. The fire hisses one last breath of warmth, and you let your eyelids fall closed. You were a knight once, and that was enough. Let the wind rage outside. Let the snow fall. Tonight, you are at peace.